What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we're going to shoot out the Revv Generator 120 Mark III with the EVH 5153 Stealth, 50 watt. Let's do it. Alright, hope you guys are doing great out there today. This has been a really fun shootout for me and I'm only about 2 minutes in. Today we're going to compare the Revv Generator 120 Mark III to the EVH 5153 Stealth, just as I said in the intro. I don't know why I'm repeating myself, but in case you missed that part, I don't know, I should probably stop talking right now. So Revv was kind enough to lend me this Generator 120 for a review, and I'm trying to get all the mileage out of it that I can while I have it. I may actually be purchasing one for myself because I'm really enjoying it. There are so many intricacies to this amp. There's so many different switches, different controls, different things that you can do, especially with the foot switch. It's just got so much built in. So what I want you to keep in mind, yes, there is a big price difference between these two amps, okay? This one comes in at now $1,400. The price went up for the new units to $1,400 from $1,300 when I bought it. The Revv Generator, I believe, is $3,300, right around that range, US dollars. But you're getting a lot of amp for the money. And this is also built in Mexico. This is built in Canada. So you have to keep those things in mind as well. This amp is just packed with all the features you could ever need as a modern guitarist. It has 4 different channels, all with their own separate gain, EQ, volume controls. It also has multiple modes of aggression on each of the higher gain channels, which basically allow you so much flexibility in the EQ. There's so many tones that you can dial this in, along with the bright, the cut, and the fat switches. You've even got built-in reverb. You've got a built-in virtual cabinet section. You've got Bluetooth built into this thing. You've got a headphone out on the front. I mean, there's so much built into this thing. It's insane. Again, please keep in mind, yes, these amps are not apples to apples. What I'm really doing is comparing them tonally, because a lot of people wonder how the Revv stacks up to other amps as far as the tone is concerned. So that's what we're doing. We're going to skip right over the cleans and low gain sounds because you know what? If you're here at my channel, you're probably not here for that. You're probably a belligerent amateur like me, or you're here to laugh at me. Either way, I'm totally fine with that. So the intro clip you heard, I had the Deadwell Duality on, okay? I had channel 3 with no aggression on the Revv, and I had the blue channel settings as they appear here on the EVH. So we're gonna dial everything back to noon on both channels. I'm gonna turn the aggression off, gonna turn the switches off, and we'll hear some quick tones and see how those channels compare to each other. Okay guys, so we've got both amps dialed in with everything at noon. I do have both of the depth on the Revv and the resonance controls on the EVH around 1 o'clock. I'm not gonna touch those, I'm pretty much gonna leave them there. But the presence, all the EQ is all back to noon. Gains are at 9 o'clock on both amps, and let's see how they compare to each other. Whereas the Revv seems a little bit fuller and fatter, but a little bit dull on top, so let's increase the presence. Now they're fairly even. The EVH seems to have a slightly more low and low mid voicing to it, but they're very close. Yeah, the Revv just overall seems like it's a little bit brighter and a little bit more upper mid content, a little bit rounder. All right, so let's increase the gains because we want more gains. They're both at 11 o'clock on each amp. All right, the same still applies. The Revv just seems like it's a little bit more aggressive, honestly, and just has more of like an upper mid bark to it, whereas the EVH seems a little bit more neutral. So let's add a little bit of mid, bump that up to 6, and a little bit of high. Again, they are very similar, but the Revv just seems to have more mid frequencies going on. All right, so let's bump that gain up to 1 o'clock on both amps. We still have no boost on. Same thing, really. They seem to be about equally saturated. Maybe a little less saturation on the EVH blue channel. All right, let's get a little bit more presence on the EVH and bump those mids just a little bit more. They are super similar as they're dialed in right now. It's crazy. All right, up to 3 o'clock on both gains. That's insane. They sound so close, it's unreal. All right, so overall the EVH sounds, again, it sounds a little bit more aggressive and it sounds like it's got more mid content. It sounds good. It's also a little rounder in the low end, so I feel like it could benefit from a boost a little bit more. But let's check the different aggression modes. Now, mine is having a slight issue. Sorry, Revv, for putting this out there, but it is something that happened. The blue LED for the aggression is supposed to come on when I kick it on the foot switch. It's not coming on. It's only going on for the red aggression mode. Back to green, which is regular. Blue, red. So the blue LED is not working on channel 3 and the red LED is not working on channel 4. Not exactly sure what happened there, but it was working when I got the amp, so I don't know. But anyways, we are on the blue aggression mode on the Revv. All right, so now we're gonna go to the red aggression on the Revv. All right, so the red seems to be the most compressed and the most saturated. It also has the most low mid focus. The blue versus the normal seems to round off the highs a tiny bit and add a little bit more lows, so it almost subdues it a little bit. But yeah, overall, not a huge difference between all three when compared to the EVH. They all sound pretty similar. Let's dial the gain back on both of them to about 11 o'clock and kick on a boost again. So again, the Revv has more mid content and it just seems like it sounds a little bit bigger overall. We're gonna turn the bass up on both amps. I'm actually gonna dial the mids back a little bit. Up here, we're gonna dial the highs back a tad, dial the lows up. Everything still applies. I mean, it's just, they sound very, very similar, but they have inherent differences in the mids and low mids, and that's really what sets them apart to me. Oh, that sounds fantastic, guys. The Revv is actually a slight bit tighter the way we have it dialed in now. Let's bump in that bright and add a little more bass and pull the actual treble back. So yeah, overall, very similar. I'm gonna put this over to the red channel on the EVH, and we're gonna go over to channel 4 on the Revv. Okay, so we are on the red channel on the EVH, and we are on channel 4, which is basically supposed to be a slightly more fat and compressed type tone, much akin to like an Uberschall or a dual rectifier. Okay. Okay, so we've got a lot more brightness and we have a lot more gain on the red channel of the EVH with everything set to noon and the gains at about 8 o'clock. So I'm gonna dial the stealth up to 9 o'clock and even match the Revv. And again, the Revv just seems a little bit more subdued with all the controls at noon, so you just gotta bump that presence and some of the highs to get it to kind of open up a little bit, but that's not a bad thing. That just shows you that there's a lot of range in those EQ controls. So I'm actually gonna bump the Revv up to noon on the gain. And also add some presence to give it some brightness. All right, so both have lots of compression. The EVH definitely has a nice low-mid focus. It's got a ton of gain, like even at 9 o'clock with no boost. Granted, I am using a Seymour Duncan Blackwinter in the bridge of this Les Paul, so it's a pretty hot pickup, but still, I mean, that's just an insanely high gain channel. All right, so we actually need to bump the gain even a little bit more on the channel 4 of the Revv, and I'm gonna bump the highs up a little bit too. And again, even on the channel 4, which is a fatter, more compressed channel, it still seems to have like a little bit more upper mid aggression to it. I will say the EVH is a slight bit tighter on this channel. I'm going to actually add some mids to the EVH and bring the lows back a tad and add a little bit of high end. And then over here, we're gonna bring the bass back a tad on the Revv and bring the mids up a little bit, add a little bit more gain. Again, there just seems to be a little bit more mid content. It's not as mid scooped in like the lower mid frequencies as the EVH seems to be. Lots of clarity in both amps, lots of tightness in both amps, surprisingly, with no boost on. I still give the edge and tightness to the EVH though, and it seems to have a little bit more high aggression on the red channel than the Revv does. So I'm actually going to pull the mids back a little bit on the Revv and bump the treble even more. Again, it's crazy how similar they sound. It really is. And it seems like where the mid EQ control is placed on the EVH, you can't quite get it to fill out the way that it does on the Revv. All right, so, they both sound so good, guys. I'm having a really good time right now. The Revv just has such an aggression to it, such an upper mid bite. Okay guys, so we're gonna go through the aggression modes on channel 4 real quick. We are on neutral. Okay, on blue. On red. Okay, much like the other channel, blue is kind of like the loosest and the roundest sounding, red is the most compressed and the highest gain, and then neutral is neutral. So, they sound quite a bit different as is right now. Let's kick on the bright and cut switches. That really makes a big difference in the EQ of the Revv. But again, both still sound fantastic. The Revv seems a little bit more open on the red with those switches on. All right, so we're gonna turn those off, and one last time, I'm gonna boost each channel. We'll go back and forth real quick, and then we'll call it a day. I gotta turn the gain down on the EVH because it's a gain monster on the red channel, so we got the deadwell duality on again. All right, so the boost really seems to kick in this mid bark on the EVH that doesn't seem to happen on the Revv, so it reacts a little bit differently. But anyways, I'm gonna go back and forth with a riff real quick and then we'll call it a day. So this is each channel boosted. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for me on this shootout. What did you think about these two amps? I think they both sounded surprisingly close, especially on channel 3, but they have their inherent differences which seem to follow them between the two channels. I personally really am digging the Revv, and you guys know how much I love the EVH. I feel like the Revv will cut like a knife in the band situation with all those extra mid frequencies that it seems to have over the EVH, but the EVH still just has this aggression to it that sounds, you know, amazing. That's a really tough choice for me, but I will say that I'm probably gonna have one of these in my possession pretty soon. But anyways, thanks again to the guys at Revv for sending this over to me to check out and shoot some demos with. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you found it helpful. Again, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Kyle here again. We'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to subscribe.